Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video you are going to be watching two replays, one in the tier 10 British SPG, the Conqueror Gun Carriage, and the second replay is going to be in the Object 261, which is the Soviet tier 10 SPG, and I haven't included any replays of artillery on this channel as of yet, and there are some good reasons why that is. One of them is because I don't play artillery all too often, although I have played my fair share of battles over the years. Second is because it's quite a contentious issue whether artillery should be in the game at all. And three, I wasn't sure if there'd be really the target audience, but I think it's a good time to include a couple replays today, have a discussion whether artillery is overpowered, whether it's balanced, whether it's good or bad for the game, how I like to get the most out of artillery when I do pick up the controller and play an SPG, maybe when I'm having a sandwich or something. And I want to discuss whether we should go down the PC route of completely rebalancing artillery, remove it, or whether it's a necessary evil to help when there's a hold down heavy on a ridgeline, you can't get rid of it, and an SPG would be the only thing to sort of deal damage with its massive splash damage. To start with, we're going to talk a little bit about the first SPG here, the Conqueror Gun Carriage. I'll tell you my commander and equipment setup, then we'll get talking about how I like to play this tank and SPGs in general. So, the Conqueror Gun Carriage, as I have alluded to, is the tier 10 British SPG. It has a 9.2 inch howitzer, which is a massive gun that deals 2,200 damage if you manage to penetrate with its 117 millimeters of penetration. You have two different ammunition choices. It's regular HE and premium HE, and the only difference between them is the blast radius. It's 7.76 meters on the regular HE and 11.1 meters on the premium HE. I carry full premium HE because I want to deal that extra splash damage, and I want to be able to track multiple targets at once, deal multiple amounts of splash at once, and boost my damage numbers and my assistance numbers that way and have more of an impact in this vehicle. It can be a relatively expensive way to play this tank, but I don't play it all too often. So the Conqueror Gun Carriage as an SPG, what are its other stats then? So it has an incredibly poor view range at 350 meters, meaning that it is very hard to spot for yourself, although if you get to that situation, you're probably not long for this world in an SPG, so it doesn't really matter too much. You have an incredibly low rate of fire at 1.17 rounds a minute, which does mean that you have a damage per minute base of about 2,574, but bear in mind that's if you penetrate every single shell, and you're going to be more likely dealing sort of between 400 to 800 splash damage. It's completely dependent upon the thickness of the armor you're shooting at and what part of the tank you are shooting. Your reload time for one shell in the Conqueror Gun Carriage is 51.3 seconds with an 8.8 second aim time. You carry 24 rounds of ammunition. You have a 1.2 meter accuracy, which is absolutely horrendous, and this doesn't have a very good range for artillery. It is, I believe, capped at 10,000 meters, so you do struggle sometimes on the larger maps to get your shell across the whole of the map, and sometimes you do have to reposition and get a little bit further forward and risk exposing yourself. In terms of the gun arc, it's 30 degrees to the left and right. You are very slow indeed, with a 14.73 horsepower to turn 34 kilometers an hour forwards, 10 in reverse, and your traverse speed is 8 degrees on your gun and 24 degrees a second on your actual SPG. So it's an SPG, isn't it? It's got 530 hit points. You sit at the back of the map, you position, and you try and rain hell from the skies upon your enemies. And what equipment and commander setup do I use to do that? Well, in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, advanced gun laying drive, and improved ventilation. And in terms of my commander, I run 6th Sense, Spawn Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Mark Target, Iron Mace, and Situational Awareness. the loader, the gun lay-in drive, and the ventilation, obviously to help the aim time, the DPM, and the accuracy of this tank, as well as the view range a little bit. Sixth Sense and Born Leader is standard. Rapid loading to help the DPM on the commander. Steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot all help the gun get in aimed as quickly as possible. Marked target is an interesting one. It's really only viable on light tanks, but I do keep it on some artillery, because if I'm the last one to detect an enemy, it means that that enemy will be spotted for 3 seconds longer. Maybe I can get a little bit of extra assistance at the end of the game and keep that enemy spotted for my teammates to try and take out a tank that is flanking around the back of the map or something like that, and I think it's quite a useful skill to have. Iron Mace is a skill that I also run on some of my artillery, which is a 25% decrease to the effect that distance has on shell penetration, so I'm more likely to penetrate my shells at longer ranges. And situational awareness, just because I can't really put any camo skills because it's a massive tank and I just want to boost my view range up that little bit more. So when you add that commander and equipment setup to the Conqueror Gun Carriage, I now have an accuracy of 0.95, so still horrific accuracy. I now have an aim time of 6.99 seconds, let's just call it 7 seconds, and I reload one shell in 36.48 seconds. So it doesn't seem that overpowered from the stats. You've got a horrendous aim time, horrendous accuracy, you hardly hit anything. You've got to wait a long time in between shells. People would surely find that boring. The case is, when you do hit an enemy, you are splashing down on their weakest armor. You have a good chance of penetrating especially lightly armored targets and dealing, you know, one shot worth of damage that can take out a tier sort of 8 or 9 tank, and maybe even take out a tier 10 tank or completely cripple them. With the high caliber gun, you deal a lot of fires, you deal ammo racks, things like that, and even if you miss your enemy, that's the word I was looking for, you're going to be splashing for something between 300 to sort of 800, maybe even 1,000 damage or more, and you can splash multiple enemies at once. You track them, deal module damages, and that's the thing that people have such a problem with. As we come to the end of this game here on Redshire in the Conqueror Gun Carriage, you can see how I have positioned myself to try and fire at the main sort of brawling location to support the heavy tank push down the eastern flank, and I've just been choosing the targets which are slower, which I know I can hit because this has a longer shell travel time than quite a lot of the other artillery. It's got a higher arc, and I can shoot behind rocks a little bit easier. But in that game we finished in second place in artillery, which isn't too bad, with a Mastery Badge, High Caliber, and a Gauze Medal, finishing the battle with 4 kills, 5.8k direct damage, and 592 assistance. And we make a profit of 5,000 silver with a premium account. But we're going to head on into the second replay with the Object 261. We're going to carry on talking a little bit about how I positioned myself in the last game. Then we're going to talk about the Object 261 and how I am playing the next game. So I'll see you there shortly. So you're joining me here on Murovanka in the Object 261, which is the tier 10 Soviet SPG. We're going to carry on talking about the last replay very briefly, and then we'll get stuck into the Object 261 and what commander and equipment setup I run on it, as well as my final thoughts on SPG's artillery inside World of Tanks console. So you remember in the last replay I was talking about where I was situated towards the south. I was firing down the eastern flank because I know that was going to be a brawling location. I wanted to support my heavies. I noticed on the loading screen, which is the first thing that I look at in every single battle regardless of what tank or SPG I am playing, I was looking at tanks that I could guess where they're going to be going and where I'm going to be directing my fire, and also tanks that I might have a better chance at penetrating. But I noticed there were super heavies and I wanted to support my friendly tanks because they might have a hard time penetrating, they might not know all of the weak points of the enemy tanks, and I don't have to penetrate to deal damage with the fantastic splash damage on the Conqueror Gun Carriage. And another tank like that, or an SPG that would be great for doing that kind of thing, would be the T-92, the American SPG, because that has a great blast radius as well. but that also has AP rounds, and that brings us full circle to the Object 261, which you're going to be watching here in the background on Murovanka. It's a slightly different SPG than the CGC because it does have AP rounds as well as regular and premium HE, and having AP rounds with higher penetration just means that you can have a little bit more flexibility and the higher chance to deal more consistent damage and penetrate more targets in an SPG. The Object 261 does differ from the CGC in many aspects, so let's go over the differences right off the bat. You have 510 hit points, which is 20 less than the CGC, but you are a smaller profile SPG. You have 3 different types of ammunition. You have regular, premium HE, as well as an AP round. You are much faster. You go 50 forwards, 12 kilometers in reverse. You have better view range at 390 meters to spot tanks that are coming for you, and in your mobility it's 17.77 power to weight ratio, so you can get across the battlefield and relocate if you need to. The traverse speed on your gun is 12 degrees a second, and on your hull it's 24 degrees a second. And it has a 180mm gun that can deal 1700 alpha damage with its standard and its premium HE if you penetrate, and 1100 alpha damage if you penetrate with its AP rounds. The penetration on the 180mm rounds is 102mm on the regular and premium HE, and 360mm of penetration with its AP rounds, giving you that extra flexibility for an SPG. It has slightly less penetration than the Conqueror Gun Carriage on its regular and premium HE because it is a lower caliber gun. As a lower caliber gun, it does fire a lot faster than the Conqueror Gun Carriage. The Object 261 has a 2.02 rounds a minute with a base DPM if you were to penetrate every single HE round at 3,434, but that's unlikely to happen. But you reload in just under 30 seconds base, and I've got that down to 21.66 seconds with my commander and equipment setup. So this is my favourite SPG because it's just more enjoyable to play. You are in the game more, you can fire more. You just have to be careful because you only have 18 rounds of ammunition, but you're much more accurate than the CGC at 0.66 meters, although that's still not very accurate. This is the most accurate, I believe, SPG at tier 10. And your aim time is much better at 6.5 seconds. However, you have to be careful when you're tracking targets because you can only move your gun 5 degrees to the left and 5 degrees to the right. And one cool thing about the Object 261 for all of you artillery players out there is that it has 3 degrees of gun depression, which might not sound a lot, but it can become useful when you are trying to shotgun tanks that are coming for you. But what equipment and commander setup do I run on the Object 261? Well, in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, advanced gun lay and drive, improved ventilation, and advanced reload. I take out the enhanced targeting information, and I'll tell you why in just a second. And in terms of my commander, I run thick sense, born leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot, iron mace, deadeye, and camouflage expertise. I take out the enhanced targeting information because it has AP rounds, and that allows me to run the advanced reload, which means I can switch between shells with no time penalty. So if I feel like firing an AP at the drop of a hat because I know I can penetrate the tank and I feel confident of hitting it, I can just switch out to an AP round. But just bear in mind that it won't give you that enhanced targeting information, and it can be harder to feather a target and know if you have a shot, so be warned for that. But that's a good thing to do with artillery, meaning you can run 4 different lots of equipment. The rest is the same as the CGC. And in terms of the commander, Iron Mace, I run the same as I ran on the CGC. I don't run marked target, instead I run Deadeye, which gives me a better chance at penetrating with my AP rounds when I'm firing at distance. It's a 6% increase to the chance of damaging modules, I should say, which is more likely to ammo rack damage fuel tanks, set people on fire, and also ammo rack them as well. And I also run camouflage expertise to try and stay hidden just that little bit better, as you have a slightly better steel concealment value than the Conqueror Gun Carriage, although I still wouldn't recommend playing this like a light tank. So when you add that command and equipment setup to the stats of the 180mm caliber gun on the Object 261, I've now got a 0.53 accuracy, a 5.27 second aim time, and a reload of 21.66 seconds. So faster firing, much more accurate, and yeah, I'd say it's more enjoyable to play, and you have those AP rounds to switch to should you need to. One good thing about the Object 261 as well is that it has a faster shell velocity, meaning you have to give less lead at targets. It's 510 meters a second on all rounds compared to the CGC's 395 meters a second, so it's better for firing at tanks that are on the move. And I play the same kind of way that I would with any other artillery like the CGC. I'm supporting the heavy tanks on different flanks, and I'm trying to go for targets I know that I can either hit directly and splash for a lot or penetrate. And when I have an AP round and I feel like going for a shot with the 360mm of penetration, I'm going for those dangerous targets, tanks that have big guns, tanks that have a lot of armor, and I'm trying to support my tanks that way as we go in with a shot there and take out the enemy T-92 in that replay on Murovanka in the Object 261. So we make a nice profit there somehow. I don't know if there is an op on, but that's a high caliber and a first class with a Gauze medal as well. We finished top of our team with 5.8k direct damage and 3 kills with 423 assistance. And my final thoughts on artillery is that there is no reflex skills involved in playing artillery inside World of Tanks console. It's all about the knowledge, and you can be a good artillery player and there are bad artillery players out there. It's very unbalanced, like there are unbalanced tanks in the form of the Turan and the Waffenträger Alf E100 and the Cobra and things that can clip you out really quickly with an autoloader. It's very unbalanced. I wouldn't say it's overpowered because you can't carry a game very easily inside an SPG, but you can be better in it. You can be good in an artillery if you choose the right targets, if you know where to position yourself on the map, if you know where to fire on the map, where tanks like to hide, all of the brawling locations. One thing to take in question is the shell arc. So on the Conqueror Gun Carriage you can loop shells over ridgelines quite easily, whereas on the Object 261 the shell arc is very narrow, meaning it doesn't fire over ridgelines very well, so you have to position yourself higher or try to as high on the map as possible to loop your shells downwards. And it just takes knowledge and experience of playing the SPGs, and you can be good in it. I think it's kind of a necessary evil. I wouldn't be disappointed if they took them out, but it would be harder to dig out some of the heavy tanks that have got hold down, like an IS-7 hold down. If no one's firing HE at it, you're going to be hard to dig it out of a position, and that's where artillery comes into play. And like I said earlier in the video, you have to bear in mind that people want to play this game, but they might not be able to play other tanks as efficiently. Maybe they have a physical disability, they can't see, they can't have as good reflexes, things like that, and I think it does allow people to play a class like that in the game. And I guess now you have the Cold War game mode where people that like that reactionary speed and think that it's all about that kind of reactionary skill, they can play the Cold War game mode. But I know it's a very controversial topic. I guess they can't really do one thing that's going to finish this discussion for all, but I'd say at the moment it's a necessary evil. It's just it's very unbalanced when you get hit, but there are very many different parts or elements of World of Tanks console that is unbalanced. I don't play an awful lot of them, and I don't like, when they were in platoons. I'm glad that has changed a little bit now. But those are my thoughts on artillery. And yeah, I'd say it's all about knowledge, knowing where to shoot on the map, knowing who you're shooting at, knowing where to position yourself, knowing your reloads, and just guessing the lead of targets, and maybe even blind firing targets that are positions you know where other artillery are in, and you can also counter battery as well, take out the enemy artillery for your team, and that will help your teammates out dramatically. So thank you all so much to listen to me waffle on about SPGs inside World of Tanks console. I hope you've enjoyed today's replays and the discussion. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on SPGs inside World of Tanks console. Thank you all so much for your support. I am now back making content, so expect more videos and giveaways over the coming weeks, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.